In this video, we're going to take an in-depth look at iZotope's BreakTweaker. We'll look at it in a logical fashion. First, we'll take a look at what it is and how it integrates with your host. Then we'll take an overview of the interface before finally going into more depth for the various functions, tools and options. BreakTweaker loads into your host software in the same way as a regular soft synth or instrument does. It's a MIDI-driven pattern sequencer that can be triggered by MIDI input, be that direct from a MIDI controller, such as a keyboard, or via MIDI notes on the associated track within your DAW. Unlike a regular instrument though, MIDI notes are used to control various triggers for the sequencer sounds and patterns, rather than the usual instrument pitch. It also has multiple outputs, allowing each track to use its own audio track within your DAW if you wish. There are 6 tracks within the BreakTweaker step sequencer, each of which have their own sound generator. Each sound generator can be made up of up to 3 layered sounds, either samples, internal synth or a combination of both. These are all fully configurable, and once configured can be saved as generator presets for easy recall later. Typically these sounds are drum and percussion types, but there's no reason other samples such as bass can't be loaded for some unique sounds. Each of the 6 sound generators can be triggered by MIDI notes C1 to F1. Note that there's no recognised standards on MIDI octaves, so depending on your DAW, you may find that the MIDI octave needed to trigger BreakTweaker varies. These 6 tracks have steps at which triggers can be placed. Each step can be further micro-edited to create rhythmic and harmonic movement. The tracks are individually configurable for both length and speed. Combined, the tracks and steps are known as a pattern that the sequencer can play back and loop. Up to 24 pattern slots are available in each instance of BreakTweaker, and they are triggered by MIDI notes C2 to B3. The patterns and sounds can also be saved as a global preset for later use. So let's take a quick overview look at the interface. At the very top, we find the global preset management area, as well as various other program controls which we'll look at shortly. In the main central display area, we find the sequencer display with the lane and the steps for each track. Each lane has various controls, and the corresponding track names are down the left-hand side. Click on a track sound generator icon to the right of the track name to reveal the sound generator edit display for that track. Click on the sequencer button to return to the main sequencer view. Just to the right of that button is an overview display of the sequencer. The currently displayed region is highlighted. Either click outside of the highlighted area or click-drag the highlighted region to move the main display quickly to that area. Beneath that is a sequencer ruler displaying the bars and beats of the current pattern sequence. Left-click and drag this to also navigate the sequence. Down the right-hand side are track output selectors, assigning a track either to the master output or its own individual out that can then be assigned as an input to tracks within your host DAW. Click on the arrow to choose an output. Further information on assigning those track inputs in your DAW will be found in your DAW help file. Beneath the sequencer track is the micro edit area. Parameters are only displayed here if a step is selected. Micro editing is editing an individual step, and we'll look at that in more detail later. At the very bottom we find a preview button which will start playback of the current pattern loaded in BreakTweaker's sequencer without the need to input a MIDI message. The tempo of the sequence can either be set independently or synced to the host DAW by clicking on the sync button. The Midi Mode buttons control how BreakTweaker reacts to incoming MIDI signals. If gate is selected, BreakTweaker will continue to play as long as a MIDI note is held down or being played by the host DAW. If latch is selected, the BreakTweaker sequencer will start playback when a note on MIDI message is received and continue playback until the same note on message is received again, at which point the sequencer will stop. Normal staccato playing will cause the sequencer to start from the beginning of a sequence when it receives a MIDI note on message. Legato-style notes that overlap will also cause the sequence to continue playing from its current position instead of starting from the beginning of the sequence. The Always Retrigger option controls whether the sequence always starts at the beginning when triggered or continues playing from the current playback position, irrespective of whether the note's end and start positions overlap legato style or not. Finally, in the bottom right hand corner are the 24 pattern slot selectors. Click on these to recall the pattern stored in a slot. Remember, these patterns respond to MIDI notes C2 to B3, and they are all saved as part of a global preset. Now we've taken a global overview, let's take a much closer look at the individual parts of the program. At the very top left, we find the global preset management area. This consists of a name field for the current loaded preset, and clicking on either the name or the icon just to the right opens the global preset browser. As I mentioned earlier, there are two different types of presets: global, which we see here, and they store both patterns and sounds, and the other type of preset, sound generator presets, we'll look at shortly, just store the various sound for each individual track. The global presets are stored in BreakTweaker's library within categories. New categories can be created by clicking on the plus icon and typing the required category name. Click on a category name to reveal the presets within that category on the right. Click on a preset to load it. Check the Load Kit Only checkbox to load only the kit associated with the preset. This allows you to try out various kits with the current loaded patterns. A kit is all 6 sounds from each track together. Also in the browser are various buttons. The Delete button can be used to delete presets and categories, but only if a category is empty. If there are any presets within that category, you need to delete them first. Note that there is no way to undo the deletion of either a category or preset. The Import button can be used to load BreakTweaker presets from your file system, and we've found in the Imported category. Export can be used to save all the settings, including samples, to your file system for transfer to another computer. The Manage Library button opens the Options dialog where the path to your BreakTweaker library can be set. The up-down arrow icons allow you to step through presets without opening the browser. To save changes to a preset or save it as a new preset, click the Save button. This opens the Save Confirmation dialog, and you can now overwrite the current preset or type a new name to create a new one. The category type can be changed using the drop-down selector. Shift-clicking the Save button will overwrite the current preset without the confirmation dialog. The New button initializes BreakTweaker to its default state. This removes all patterns and sound generators. Further along, we find the Undo tools consisting of a back and forward arrow to step through the undo and redo of the last actions. The drop-down arrow reveals the undo history. Scroll to the action you wish to jump back to and click on it. There are also 4 save slots A to D that can have a point in the history assigned to each of them for instant recall to those points. Click on the Set button to assign the point and the letter to jump to that assigned point. If the letters are dimmed, no point in history has been assigned. The Clear button clears the history completely. The MIDI In button lights to show incoming MIDI data, and the exclamation mark is a panic button that stops all output and all MIDI input. The question mark opens the help file, and the cog icon opens the options dialog. Here, various options can be set to suit your needs. The intensity rotary controls a basic compression to add intensity to the output, while the gain control can be used as a master output with a signal returning to your DAW. Now let's have a look at how we use BreakTweaker.